Some of the most haunting stories from movies, some of the scariest novels that have ever been written, and all of your worst nightmares in one place. We have all of this on today's most amazing top 10 list. Coming at number 10, we have The Gargoyle. There was a horror movie that came out back in the 90s, and it was called Tales from the Dark Side, and I remember watching it as a kid, and a piece of it is sticking with me to this day. The story goes, there's a man who sees a gargoyle murder someone, and then the creepy monster is about to kill him, and then he makes a deal with the beast. He's basically like, let me live and I won't tell anyone about you. I'll keep it a secret and you can go on being a gargoyle and I can go on being a human. The gargoyle's like, alright dude, I will absolutely take that deal, but if you break your end of the deal, I am going to come and kill you. Seems fair if you ask me. Well, the man goes on to have a normal life. He meets a lady, has some kids, and the two of them are in love and the dude's life seems pretty good. To go from almost getting killed by a mythical creature to walking away a free man and now happily married, it doesn't sound like your life could get much better than that. Well, obviously this guy has never forgotten about the day he saw a real life monster and feels like the coast is clear and he can now tell his wife about what he saw on that day, which is a dumb move because you're not only breaking the deal, but your wife is probably going to think you're crazy. Well, this dude does it anyways, and then his wife transforms into a gargoyle and his kids walk out and they're two gargoyles too. The whole thing was a sting operation to see if the guy would ever slip up, and then of course she kills him. But ever since I saw that movie as a kid, I've always remembered, if you ever make a deal with a mythical creature, don't break it because you might be sleeping with one. Coming at number 9, we have It. This is probably the most famous horror movie novel combination of all time. Most of the people watching this video will know all about Pennywise, the killer shape-shifting clown that lives in the sewers and is a demon from another dimension and eats kids and only needs to feed every 20 years. When you break it down like that, it sounds like some nightmare a kid has while he has a fever and drank too much Monster Energy. But when you see it all laid out on paper, you start seeing something that could be one of the scariest stories ever written. When you're reading through this book, just the bully, Henry Bowers, is terrifying enough to have his own book where he is the antagonist. Not to mention that Pennywise is such a powerful creature that he comes back to terrorize the gang again when they're adults. If you thought you could grow out of your fears, this book will tell you that you are dead wrong because they will always come back to haunt you. Coming in at number 8, we have Dracula. I mean, vampires are so much of our culture that some of the best TV shows and books are based around them, and while Dracula isn't the first book that mentions these creatures, it really lays the foundation for everything we have today. And then Twilight took that foundation and made vampires the most popular thing in the world for a few years. Whether or not you like that series, you have to admit that it made everyone in show business think that they needed to make some sort of content about vampires. But reeling everything back, it was really this book that put those bloodsuckers on the map as one of the top dogs in the monster world. And it made ladies be wary of old rich dudes who live in big castles and really want to kiss you on the neck and have very cold lips. Like, is this dude wearing foundation? Why is his skin so pale? Coming in at number 7, we have The Terror. Now, I have actually read this book and I highly recommend it. The Terror by Dan Simmons takes some of the most horrific parts of human nature, Mother Nature, and sprinkles in a little bit of supernatural to spice everything up. The story takes place in the mid-1800s and it follows a real voyage that actually happened when the two ships, the Ibris and the Terror, set sail to find the Northwest Passage. Now, in reality, no one knows what happened to these ships, but in the book they get stuck in the ice, and then the reader gets to see what happens when men run out of food and hope in one of the harshest environments on the planet. On top of that, there's an unkillable super bear that is walking around on the ice taking them out one by one, not because it needs food, but because it just likes watching these men suffer. It's a classic tale of whatever can go wrong will go wrong, and any moment of hope is ripped out of the reader's hands before they can even get settled in. There's even a flashback in the book that's supposed to be a happy memory, and it ends in despair. If you're feeling down or trapped inside by a harsh winter, then you might want to skip this one. Coming in at number 6, we have House of Leaves, a psychological horror that dives into many layers to make the reader feel confused and question what is real and what is not. The book has several viewpoints. One of them follows Johnny, an LA partier in his mid-20s who's been going out every night trying to sleep with women and slam as many narcotics into his face as humanly possible. Johnny comes across first a script that was written by an old blind man who recently passed away. This is where the second perspective comes in. The script is its own story about a family that moves into a home which is impossibly large on the interior. Eventually it's discovered that there's a long hallway in the home and a massive spiral staircase that doesn't align with what we understand as the laws of time and space. This mystery house is also constantly moving and hostile. As Johnny reads the scripts, he starts to descend into madness, and the reader is constantly questioned with whether or not the script is real or if Johnny is just losing his mind. The whole book is an extreme trip, and although some of the side stories aren't as interesting as the script within the book itself, it's definitely a horror novel you should keep your eye on. Coming in at number 5, we have Anything by H.P. Lovecraft, probably one of the most famous horror writers of all time. Lovecraft brought in fears of the cosmic and oceans with creatures that were so popular they still stand tall amongst the many monsters of entertainment. I mean, who doesn't know what Cthulhu is? But if you're looking for creepy stories that will give you some serious nightmares, then H.P. Lovecraft has tons of them for you. Most of them involve some creature that's worked its way into a small, unassuming town via space or mysterious cult. Not to mention, many of these creatures are older than time itself and have the power to end all life as we know it. There is one Lovecraftian creature that sleeps at the center of the universe, and everything in creation is its dream. If he wakes up, we will all die. And the only reason that he's still sleeping is because there's a little alien dude playing a flute to keep him asleep. Could you imagine if all of existence was hanging on a flute solo? Coming in at number 4, we have Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. If you're looking for another collage of horror stories that might not be that frightening to adults but will scare the hell out of kids, then this would be a great pick. The reason that these stories are better to scare kids is because they center around more ghosts and monsters, where things that scare adults are a fragile job market and something like Gone Girl, where your crazy partner ruins your life for cheating on them. Just to give you an idea of how menacing these stories are, this was the most banned book in the 90s. What put these books on the map was not just the horrific storytelling but the well-crafted imagery that's placed in the book. They filled in the gaps in your imagination so you knew exactly what you should be terrified of. Coming in at number 3, we have Frankenstein. Let's move back into the classics with one of the best horror novels and just best novels of all time. I mean, this story has been told so many times that most of you all know it. There's a mad scientist who wants to create a person from spare parts that he's able to get together. He pieces them all together, and then with the help of electricity and his trusty sidekick Igor, he's able to bring the monster to life. Not only is this an amazing horror novel for bringing in a world-class monster, but the highlight of the book is probably the examination of human nature. Even though a center point of the book is about a horrible creature being brought to life, you start to empathize with it as the monster is chased down by an angry mob with torches and pitchforks. Any book that's able to take the perspective of someone you could never understand and make you feel like you're in their shoes is doing a pretty good job. And not only that, but you are on the side of the monster in this amazing read. On top of that, this book might give you some nightmares when you realize that at any moment you could be on the wrong end of an angry mob that will tear you limb from limb. Coming in at number 2, we have The Bluest Eye. Now here's a story that's so steeped in reality that it will have you crying and up all night with nightmares. The Bluest Eye is one of Toni Morrison's most famous books, and it highlights the racism in America in the 1940s. Let me just tell you that this story is dark, as it highlights abuse in every sense of the word. The struggle of the protagonist in this story is so brutal that eventually she has a mental breakdown. And just to make this story weigh on your soul even more, there's no happy ending at the end of it. Where the other stories on this list are all scary because they bring in some sort of fantasy angle and make the reader wonder what could happen if something like that was real, this story hits you right in the face with the horrific truth of America's past. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Something Wicked This Way Comes. Now this one swings into the top spot because it brings in so many things that are classic today in the horror genre. This story follows a couple of young kids who wandered off and get themselves into trouble. You have a creepy carnival complete with creepy clowns and someone who is evil and offering up wishes. And outside of being terrifying, the writing style of Ray Bradbury is considered some of the best of all time. So if you ever looked at a funhouse coming to town and thought that would be the perfect setting for a horror show, then this book is for you. Alright guys, I've been your host Jade Arena. This has been Most Amazing Top 10, and I hope you keep enjoying this spooky content. Bye. I'm hungry. I'm gonna go eat after this. Okay. Alright guys, I've been your host Jade Arena. This has been Most Amazing Top 10.